very excited for today's build because not only is it one of the most powerful builds I've ever attempted, but also because it's going to be the cleanest build I've ever done. My goal is to have no cables whatsoever on show, and the key part of that is actually this word stealth, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but also thanks to Sama for actually sending out their power supply unit, all-in-one cooler, and their case. I haven't actually got the box for the case here just because the box would be too big with everything else, but the case is a really nice looking one, as you can see from the clips on screen now, and it also supports reverse connect motherboards, and that's actually a key part of this build because what that allows me to do is have all of the connections on the back of the motherboard, and then on the front you don't actually see anything. I'm going to go into the build montage in just 1 minute, but first I wanted to talk about the parts that's actually going into this build. And firstly, let's start with the CPU, which is the Ryzen 9900X. It's a 12-core CPU, and it's not an X3D variant, and that's because I'm not actually going to be gaming on this particular system. It's going to be a workstation build, and to back that up, I've gone with 64 gigs of Corsair Vengeance RAM. Hello, it's me from the future. Basically, I was about to say that the RAM was a fairly good deal, but often it was a little bit cheaper, and I was wondering if I was overpaying for it. But not long after actually paying £250 for it, it went out of stock everywhere and then got relisted at almost double the price. This whole timeline completely sucks, to be honest. But anyway, that's how much I paid for the RAM. I ended up getting completely lucky, and now I'm going to go on to the next components. And talking about price hikes, that brings us on to the NVMe drives. I'm not actually going to use this particular NVMe drive as my main one just because it doesn't have DRAM cache, but what I'm going to do is have two NVMe drives. So I'm going to pull one of the two ones out for my existing build because both of them contain DRAM cache, so that's going to be my operating system one. Then I'm going to use this as like a secondary drive for any extra models and video editing and things like that. Next up, we come to some of the Sama products. So this is the Sama G1000. It's got support for ATX 3.1, which means native 12-volt power and things like that. And also this is a highly rated PSU. It's 80 plus gold and cybernetics platinum, so should work out really well. Next is the all-in-one cooler, which looks really nice. It's got a slightly thicker radiator and fans on it for extra cooling, and the bit that actually goes onto the CPU as well looks really nice and high quality. So this is the Sama L70, and this is the 360mm variant. And the case that I'm going to be building in is also from Sama. It's the V60, which looks absolutely stunning. It's got a really nice curved edge. It comes with loads of fans pre-installed, and in general it's going to look brilliant, and it does support both ATX motherboards and also reverse connection motherboards. And that brings us to the motherboard, which is the heaviest motherboard I've ever seen. I mean, the actual box is really heavy, but on my other channel I unboxed this, and actually the motherboard itself is incredibly heavy too. So this is X870, and it's Gigabyte Aorus, which is one of the better models compared to like some of the other Gigabyte brands. And this particular one is Ice, meaning it's white, and it's Stealth, meaning reverse connect. And it's got loads of connectivity too, you know, Wi-Fi 7 support, 5 gigabit LAN, which you don't often see on many motherboards. That's really good, and also really good power phases. And next we come to the RTX 5090, which you might have seen in the background of this video. Sadly, it's not my particular GPU. I'm actually helping a friend with a separate workstation build. I mean, all the other parts I'm going to use, and I haven't made up my mind yet about what graphics card I'm going to have, but my friend recently bought the RTX 5090, and this is one of the only RTX 50 series cards that has no cables on show. I think there is another single one which has got a connector at the top, but you can also connect it to certain motherboards, but that's a little bit more proprietary, whereas this one you can actually use with any reverse connect motherboard because the connector in this is actually hidden at the back, a bit like the 9070 XT Nitro. And that wraps up all of the parts, so next I can get going. build is done and I absolutely love it. Usually I have it facing in this direction, but I just rejig the desk a little bit so you can actually see it in the sideways view, and every time I look at it, I absolutely love it. At first I wasn't actually sure what I'd think of it when it was actually completed, because I've seen people online moan about, you know, RGB white fish tank builds, but actually this looks unbelievably cool. I absolutely love it. It's just so clean, and I want to show off some gaming benchmarks, but first I wanted to talk about some of the pros and cons of this build and some of my thoughts about actually specific bits, because you might have noticed that not all of the cables are completely hidden away. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is the case, the Sama V60, which has a white and a black variant, but this particular one is obviously the white one. It comes pre-configured with 6 or 7 ARGB fans. In fact, it's 7, I can't count. So you've got 3 on the bottom there, 3 on the side and 1 at the rear. The thermal performance of this case and this build in general have been brilliant. I mean, the GPU is idling, you can see it there at 38 degrees Celsius, and even under load, you know, the GPU doesn't get much beyond 60 or 70 degrees Celsius, which is completely brilliant. And then the CPU is also kept very, very cool as well. So yeah, overall, I really like the case. I like the fact it's got this, you know, nice tempered glass effect all the way around on the front and the side. It's a really nice case, and that then brings me onto the Sama all-in-one cooler, which is the L70. It's a really nice infinity mirror effect, meaning that actually taking video of the build is a bit hard because you keep seeing yourself in the actual mirror effect, but actually, yeah, it's a really nice looking all-in-one cooler. Obviously, it doesn't have like an LCD screen to show off stats and things like that, but yeah, I don't personally need that. Between actually having this in the GPU so I can see the GPU stats, and then using HW info on the computer is enough for me. Now, one downside of this all-in-one cooler, and it affects pretty much all all-in-one coolers to be honest nowadays, is that you're going to have a boatload of cables actually coming off the pump and also the radiator at the top. So what I actually had was 2 cables up here and 2 up here. So one for the sort of PWM or the pump control and one for the ARGB. And then you also had daisy chain functionality, which was useful because I could share the ARGB, but it also meant that, you know, that's yet more cables you actually have. And then you have to deal with them, of course, and that actually presents challenges for a no cable build like I was doing. But what I did in the end was actually run the cables up here, and then I used some white Velcro zip ties up there to hide the cables further, and I think the end effect is really good. So that is the pump, and in general, I've also got a Corsair all-in-one cooler, and what I find is I prefer the noise of this one. Like with the Corsair one, even at idle, I was hearing the pump sort of whirring mechanism quite a lot, but with this Sama L70 cooler, you just don't get that at all. You know, at idle, it is really, really quiet, and when gaming is not too loud either, and my CPU doesn't get too hot either, so that is completely brilliant. Sama also did send me out a power supply unit, their G1000, which is gold rated, and then cybernetics platinum, and that worked out really, really well for me. The one downside of the PSU that I did find though is that it only comes with 3 8-pin PCI Express cables, which you might think is enough, but actually if you've got a high-end GPU and then a fan hub that needs PCI Express power, it's not going to be enough for you. Equally, if you have a 5090 and you want to use the included SQUID adapter, you need 4 PCI Express cables, and again, Sama only give you 3, so that is a little bit of a letdown, but in general, the 3 Sama parts that were sent out to me have worked out really, really well for me, and thank you to Sama again for actually sending them out to me. And then that brings us on to Gigabyte Stealth, and they've worked out really well for me, and this was actually my first ever reverse connect motherboard build, and actually it's brilliant. I do really, really like it. You know, to have no cables on show is absolutely brilliant, but you do need to choose your case carefully, because what you will get with a reverse connect motherboard is a massive concentration of cables in a particular point, and especially towards the bottom of the motherboard, you've got loads of cables concentrated down there, and it's really, really hard to plug things in because you've got this massive mesh of cables. And in that sense, this case wasn't too bad because the PSU is at the top, so at least you've got the PSU cables at the top, and you know, for your actual motherboard and your CPU connections and cables, they go in the top, and then there's slightly less cables at the bottom. But this case still does have a fan hub at the bottom, meaning suddenly you've got loads of cables coming off there for ARGB and PWM. Then you've got the USB connections and the ones for the, you know, HD audio and things like that. So that is a bit of a pain, and you will, you know, struggle with that a little bit more with reverse connect motherboards. The other thing I'd say is the 5090 Stealth from Gigabyte Aorus is an absolutely stunning graphics card. I absolutely love it's got an LCD screen, and you know, you can completely configure this as well. You can upload your own images and your own GIFs and things like that. But the one downside, at least to me, is that the Stealth aspect, which is meant to hide away that 12-volt power connector, I think it's not been done as well as it could have been, because if you actually look at the 9070 XT Nitro Plus from Sapphire, what that's actually done is the 12-volt power cable comes into the same position, but then you get a metal backplate to put back on the GPU, and you just never see that cable whatsoever, the 12-volt power cable. But with this one, you kind of don't get that, because, you know, you've just got this open slot there, sort of. This GPU does actually come with a fourth fan, which is meant to sit on top of here, and that will help with cooling, and it will also hide away that 12-volt power cable if you're looking up, in this direction. So yeah, I didn't actually include that fan just because I wanted things to look ultra clean, but obviously the ultimate solution with this is you do run with that fourth fan, and then you're not going to see that 12-volt power cable. And whilst I'm criticizing this amazing graphics card, which is cool and everything else, but whilst I'm criticizing it, I also didn't like the anti-sag bracket, and I did use that originally with the build. So when you looked at the build montage, you will have seen that there, but that's now no longer there. And the reason I didn't like it is the VGA holder, as they call it, runs all the way up there. But either way, it just looks a little bit silly and a little bit messy. So as a result, I just ordered a third-party one on Amazon for like £5 and, put that at the back, and it works out really, really well. I will go on to gaming benchmarks in just 1 minute, but I did mention that this GPU sadly isn't mine. My friend is doing an AI workstation build, but then that raises the question of which GPU should I go for? And I could go for the 9070 XT Nitro, especially since I've talked about how good that actually looks. But part of the problem is I'm going to use this a lot for video editing, and unfortunately NVIDIA graphics cards are just better for that, especially with the Blackwell architecture with the RTX 50 series. That is a lot better for video editing in DaVinci Resolve than AMD's graphics cards are, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. But for now, I wanted to go into the gaming benchmarks. Now, I should say at this point that the system is overkill for gaming, but I still wanted to show off a few benchmarks. So with Ray Tracing Ultra at 4K with no upscaling, we get a surprisingly playable 40 to 50 FPS average, with 1% lows a bit below 40 FPS. I actually think this is pretty good considering how demanding a game like Cyberpunk with ray tracing on can actually be. The GPU is then using 550 to 600 watts of power, which is scary, and the Ryzen 9900X is drawing around 130 watts, so a fairly power-hungry system. Still, the temps are averaging 70 degrees Celsius on both the CPU and the GPU, which I find fairly impressive considering I've done no tuning or undervolting whatsoever. If I then switch to Ray Traced Overdrive, which is even more demanding, but I enable DLSS quality mode, I get a stable 60 FPS average with fairly reasonable 1% lows too, and the power usage of the GPU now goes down to 500 watts or so. I think this looks better than with native rendering while running cooler due to the lower power usage, which is really, really nice. Moving over to Space Marine 2 now and maxing out all of the settings, including with ray tracing on of course, and starting off with DLSS quality enabled, saw an average of 90 FPS with a 1% low rate of around 70 FPS. The power draw then was averaging around 400 watts or just below, which actually puts it on par with the RTX 5080, which is fairly impressive in my opinion for such a nice looking game. If I then switch back to native rendering, the average FPS rate goes down to 80 FPS, with the 1% lows dipping down to 50 FPS, whilst the power draw is closing in on the melterific 600 watts, which we all know and loathe. Love. GPU temps continue to hover around 90 degrees Celsius, which I find really impressive for such a high power draw. I think really Gigabyte have completely nailed the cooling on this particular model. They've also nailed the default overclock, because without doing anything, my system got an average Steel Nomad score of 14884. Temps were also fairly good too, with the CPU just above 50 degrees Celsius and the GPU getting around 10 degrees average above this. And that kind of wraps things up. Please do let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'd be really eager to hear from you, and if you enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button and please subscribe to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.